Robert Buckland, thanks for joining us on Politics Hub. Now, I want to talk to you all about the Rwanda bill, but before we get to that, how much trouble is Rishi Sunak in?
Well, look, it's a challenging time to be Prime Minister. I think anybody in office is facing huge challenges at home and abroad. The economy, security, health service, all these issues are pressing upon us, largely as a result of the impact of COVID and all the problems that we've experienced. So this is a tough job, but it's not made any easier by gossip and rumour mongering. I think that all needs to end. I don't think there's many people involved in that. The majority of MPs I speak to spend their weekends like I did, knocking doors, talking to residents and dealing with the issues that matter to the public rather than worrying about the Westminster spin machine. OK,
so the Westminster spin machine, but when I talk to all of your colleagues, I'm sorry to say, but everyone I talk to everyone is talking about the Tory psychodrama at the moment and the predicament of the Prime Minister. Has he lost command of the party? How dangerous is the situation for him? Could he face a confidence vote?
Look, I don't believe so, Beth. I think this is a very small issue. I think there might be one or two people expressing concerns. We know some of them publicly. But the vast majority of Tory MPs know that this is an election year. And in election years, you need to get behind the lead and get on with the job of talking about the economy, talking about the issues that matter to the public.
But the problem is they're not getting behind the leader. And even if it is a small group of people, it's very loud what they're doing, and it's very destabilising, right?
Well, look, sometimes I think there's the echo chamber of modern politics where one voice becomes magnified by repetition or retweeting or whatever you like. I don't think that's representative of the vast majority of colleagues either here in Westminster or indeed councillors and friends right across the party. We've got an election to fight. We've got the future of our country at stake. Nothing could be more important. And the way we win the election is by focusing on what matters to the voters, not what matters to politicians here at Westminster. This is about the future of our country. The Prime Minister's focusing on that with a speech on the economy today. He's right to prioritise the economy. That's what will decide the election. That's what we need to be talking about.
Has he lost authority in the party, though? I mean, a lot of people are saying he should have sacked Tom Tugendhat and Anne-Marie Trevelyan for making an intervention on defence spending, Andrew Bowie for making an intervention on the decision to tax oil and gas. Like, he has lost cabinet collective responsibility, some people are saying, and authority within the party. I mean, he is on shaky ground, isn't he?
I mean, it doesn't look like collective responsibility has been lost. I mean, one or two ministers speaking out of turn can be dealt with by the Chief Whip, I am sure. Collective responsibility matters. I see it being enforced in this government. The Prime Minister has had notable successes. He's making progress on the economy, Beth. And we see health waiting lists coming down. We're seeing progress on reducing the small boat.
One more thing about it is I've spoken to a lot of your colleagues today. I'm now spending my life ringing round, testing the temperature within the Conservative Party. Lots of disagreement about how dangerous a situation Sunak is in. Some people are more along your lines. Some people think he's in real trouble. What everyone does seem to agree on is that the local elections is a danger point for him.
Well, look, every local election cycle is always a tough moment, or it's a moment of success for leaderships. But local elections are decided on myriads of different issues. People who vote at local elections tend to be very politically engaged. They're the ones who come out regularly. Whilst they're very important, and of course, as usual, I'll be fighting and supporting my candidates in Swindon, as I've done for nearly 20 years. I think that ultimately how people vote at a local election isn't necessarily what happens at a general election. What we should be remembering is that by focusing on the priorities of the people, which is the economy, which is health, which is sorting out migration, then we will earn our right to win.
Let's park that for a moment, because one thing that might help him is getting these flights off to Rwanda. How critical is that for the Prime Minister's future and the future for the Conservative Party to get these flights away?
Well, I think most importantly, what is in the interest of the country? And I think doing something innovative on using a third country, working with a third country to help deal with what is an international problem is something I think we should welcome. In fact, at no time have the courts said that this was unlawful, and other European countries are looking at similar models. This is innovative, groundbreaking stuff, and it's going to be difficult, which is why we've got to make sure that in the legislation we pass, we don't create yet more hurdles for the courts to have to examine and potentially mark the government down on. And that's why I think the detail of today's vote is important. I want to make sure that Rwanda does what it's agreed to do in the treaty, to bring in all these procedures to make it absolutely watertight, and we can show the world that working with another country, we can help manage what is a really difficult problem.
The obvious question from that, though, Robert, is that in making sure that all of the treaty has been implemented could slow down the timing with which those flights get away, which would politically be quite damaging for the Prime Minister. Do you acknowledge that?
Well, look, I think it's clearly in everybody's interest, most notably the national interest, for these flights to happen. And I think for Keir Starmer to say that he'd scrap the scheme even if it worked is a rather extreme position. And I don't think one that stands up to close scrutiny. I think clearly we'd like to get those flights sooner rather than later. But my worry is that if we, rush the fence here and pass legislation that doesn't stand up to scrutiny, we're only going to delay it further.
But these amendments are all going to be overturned anyway, aren't they? The government aren't listening to what you want.
Frankly, probably not. I think they'd be wise to, but it may well be that the Lords will come back with further refinements that could work in a better way.
But you're not going to torpedo but you wouldn't vote against it because they won't accept your amendments.
Well, look, the bill has been through both houses now. This is detail on the amendment part of the bill. There are issues that I have with some of the Lords' amendments. There are other ones that I agree with. I have to accept that I vote for myself and I use my conscience as an individual member of Parliament.
So you might abstain or vote against?
Well, I've said that there are some Lords amendments that I think have merit, and that's why I've been listening hard in the debate today, and I'll go back and listen more. I want to see this bill be as legally watertight as possible. What we mustn't do is create a situation where we have yet more wrangling in the courts, Robert, which serves nobody any good.
You're part of the One Nation group of Conservatives. Lots of your colleagues were also uncomfortable about some aspects of this legislation. Are there others that might consider whether to support it?
Well, look, I'm sure that individuals and colleagues and friends are looking, as I do, at the detail of the bill, and there may well be other people who agree with me. There might be a number who choose to abstain. But look, I think ultimately we all want this to work, but it's got to work in a way that is legally sound.
Is your message to the government, just accept some of our amendments, please, thank you, and we'll back you, but otherwise maybe not?
Well, yes, I think the whole process of legislative scrutiny is designed to improve legislation, and that's why it, I think, is wise sometimes to heed those warnings.
And how many people do you think might be in your camp?
I don't know, Beth. I'm not in the business of whipping votes or doing that sort of machination. I come to this using my own individual judgment in the Burkean tradition of representative democracy.
The point is it's very important for the Prime Minister to come through this week with that legislation going to royal assent. It's really critical for him. What you're saying is accept some of the amendments or you might not be guaranteed to have the support of a chunk of your MPs?
Well, I'm not sitting here and holding out on behalf of other colleagues. I think that would be wrong. I think people in the party have known my views about this consistently. I spoke at all stages, and I'm going to be consistent to what I think is the best balance here.
It'd be pretty bad if he can't get the bill passed. I mean, then he's really in the kill zone, isn't he?
I think the bill passes. And I think that, what we need to do here is elevate all of this above the soap opera of whether the Prime Minister's up or down or in or out. That's not actually what he is interested in. It's not what the country's interested in. Let's remember who matters here. It's millions of people out there whose lives and the future of our country depend on the choices we make this year. And that's why we need to focus relentlessly on what they want.
And, Robert, just finally on this, the idea is now politically people talk about if you can just get a plane away, a win is a win, even if it's just dozens of people, not huge numbers. How important is it for the Prime Minister? I know you don't, you said it's about big issue, but it is also about his survival and also delivering what he's promised to the public. How important is it for him to get a plane away? And do you think it can happen before a general election if you base it on a general election happening in the second half of the year?
I think it's important, and I think it's eminently achievable to get a plane off by the election. But this is not the only issue upon which he should be judged. He should be judged on the fight against inflation, on increased wages, on growing the economy, on getting the big issues right. And he's making the right calls, and he's showing maturity, hard work, and an example, I think, that we can follow.
And your colleagues that are rabble-rousing at the moment, have you spoken to any of them directly? Have you, I mean, is it bad, is it ill-tempered within the party at the moment?
I am not having any of those conversations with colleagues, and I don't think colleagues are having many of those conversations.
Remonstration with them, telling them to shut up.
Look, people know my view, and I express it fairly trenchantly on local and national media. Colleagues, I think, who've been around the cycle as I have, will know that in an election year, it's now time to get together, focus relentlessly on the public, and forget about the machinations.
I'm going to end this now, but just are you 100% sure that Rishi Sunak will lead the Conservatives into the next general election?
Absolutely.
You're absolutely sure of that?
Well, there's no question, of course.
OK. Robert Buckland, thank you so much for joining us on Politics Hub.
Thank you.
Good.